Israel has begun the West Bank mapping process referenced by President Donald Trump at the revealing of his peace plan on January 28. We will discuss the prophetic implications of this event and much more on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. Thank you for joining me on this edition of End of the Age. Now, I wanted to give you guys an update on what's going on with the peace agreement and different things over in the Middle East. I know all of us have kind of been waiting for a peace agreement to be rolled out, because for those of us that understand Bible prophecy, there is a peace agreement going to be signed in the Middle East between the Israelis and Palestinians that will mark the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon. So I'm going to be giving you updates on that today. So what's happening? Well, the Bible does foretell a Palestinian peace agreement that will mark the beginning of the final 7-year period, which will end with the Battle of Armageddon and the physical return of Jesus Christ to the earth. Of course, Donald Trump, before winning the presidency, said that he would attempt to do the deal that can't be done. He was referencing a peace deal in the Middle East. Well, within 1 week of his inauguration, President Trump appointed his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his personal attorney of 20 years, Jason Greenblatt, two of his most trusted aides, to lead the Middle East peace project. Well, of course, Irvin, Baxter, myself, everybody here at Endtime, and many of you that follow Bible prophecy, we were thinking, well, okay, can this be it? Well, they worked tirelessly for the next 2 years. And by January of 2019, the peace proposal, which Trump renamed the deal of the century, it was ready to go. However, Israel's government had just collapsed. New elections were scheduled for April of last year. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asked President Trump to delay the releasing of that peace deal, the deal of the century, until after those elections, which of course he did. The April 9 elections ended in a deadlock with no party able to form a government. And consequently, new elections were scheduled for September 17th, 2019. And again, Trump delayed the rollout of the peace plan. And then the September 17 elections occurred. They also ended in a deadlock with no government being formed. And in an unprecedented development, Israel scheduled its third election in 1 year for this coming Monday, March the 2nd, 2020. And imagine having 3 presidential elections in the United States in 1 year. So now you know what Israel's going through. It's a mess. So by this time, President Trump was becoming obviously impatient. He wants to roll this thing out because his election's coming up. He wants to get this thing done before the election campaign and the 2020 election in November. So he was becoming impatient, but he also wondered if the rollout of the peace plan might help break the political deadlock that Israel found itself in. So the decision was made to reveal the deal of the century on January 28th of just a couple weeks ago. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu and his political opponent, Benny Gantz, were invited to the White House for that dramatic ceremony. And many of you watched it as we did. Very historical. Many of the Arab nations, their leaders came and participated in that. I mean, leaders from all over the place, because it's a very significant speech that they were going to give revealing the peace agreement. Well, for political reasons, Gantz, Netanyahu's opponent in the Israeli elections, he declined the invitation but he did come to the White House the day before the unveiling so he could be informed of its contents. Well, on January 28th, President Trump did make the speech at the White House revealing the overall contents of the peace plan to the entire world. And the contents of the deal of the century were also published on the White House website, and you can go view them today. Many, believe me, have emailed us saying, hey, how can I read the peace plan for myself? If you go to whitehouse.gov, you can check it out. I mean, it's there. You go to the Peace to Prosperity plan. It's right there on the White House website. And then when you go there, it gives the economic portion, it gives the political portion, it gives a brief description of them. Then you go down to the bottom of the page, because I've had to walk some people through all this. Go down to the bottom of the page, and you can download the entire document. I think it's 181 or 182 pages, and it goes through the entire political portion, the entire economic portion of the plan. So I want to give you some updates on that today. What's going on? Because if you don't follow this stuff real close, you can kind of get out of the loop. So that's what we're going to do this afternoon. We're going to talk about Israel, what's going on with the peace agreement, what have they started to do, what's the chances of getting done. We'll go through some of this afternoon to give you an update. So we've got a lot of stuff that we're going to go through when we get back from the break. Join us then. I'll also give you an update where Irvin Baxter is at and talk about a few different things.
About our trip, it was a wonderful experience. We totally enjoyed the time spent with other believers, worshiping and experiencing the places where Christ walked. One of our favorites was being on Mount Moriah, where the Holy of Holies are, the Dome of the Spirit. And the teachings that Brother Baxter did was so enlightening. It was so much to take in. It will take us another month or two to really grasp the full extent of the knowledge we received on this trip. Our tour guide in Israel was fantastic. He was very knowledgeable. I think God chose him just for us. Thanks, Jana. Our lives will never be the same. We will try to do this tour again. Mike and Julie L., Cayman Islands.
Join us May 1st through May 16th, 2020, for a trip to the wonderful land of Israel and the Holy Roman Empire reborn.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, Endtime Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And I wanted to go through some stuff real quick. I'm going to get through to the Trump peace plan, but real quick, I want to announce a conference that's going to happen this weekend with Irvin Baxter, and he's going to be in Chesapeake, Virginia. He's going to be at the Bible World Apostolic Church, 600 Happy Acres Road, Chesapeake, Virginia, 23323. It's with Pastor Jack Cunningham. He's going to be there Saturday evening at 6 o'clock. That's February 29th, 6 in the evening. And he's going to be teaching America's God-Given Destiny. And then on Sunday morning at 10 a.m., the same church, Breaking Prophetic Fulfillments. So if you'd like information on that, where Irvin's going to be this weekend, we're getting our prophecy schedule ramped up here, starting to travel again this year. And go to our endtime.com website and go under events and then conferences, and you can check it out. All the information's there, maps, everything to get you to the conference this weekend if you're anywhere in that area. Secondly, I want to mention our tour. We're going to Israel and Europe this spring. We leave May 1. We'll get back on May 16th. And what a wonderful trip it is. I've been there many times. And, of course, Israel, I think we're going to be there 9 days or something like that. We're going to be in Europe 5 days, 5 or 6 days. And so if you'd like to join us, we start in Israel. We start in Jerusalem. We'll end up in Tiberias, up by the Sea of Galilee, where we'll do the baptisms. We'll see everything along the way. And then we'll be going up to Europe, where we'll do the Holy Roman Empire tour. And we'll be going to the most well-preserved concentration camp in the world. It's called Breendonk. And wow, what an eye-opening experience that is. The whole trip's really a life-changing experience. We'll be going to the Charlemagne building right there across the street from the Parliament building in Brussels, Belgium. We'll be going and seeing the woman riding on the back of the beast right there by the Parliament building. I mean, there's so much biblical, historical, prophetic significance to this trip. And, you know, you just got to go and experience it to see what's really going on. For those of you that are Bible study teachers, pastors, people that are really into this stuff, and you're trying to teach it, there's nothing better, number one, than going to Israel in your lifetime. I've had people go on the Israel tour with us, pastors, that said, wow, Dave, all of my sermons I've ever taught just changed. All of my stories about the Bible, having seen it in person. I'll never preach or teach the same way again. And it's so true, believe me. I mean, I can give a color commentary on a story in Israel because I've been there many times, rather than just, you know, reading the Bible is awesome, obviously, but having been there and experienced it, wow, what an eye-opening and life-changing experience. So if you'd like to join us, the tour is May 1 through May 16th, but you need to get in pretty quick because we've only got so much time left before we need to book flights and all that good stuff. So join us on the trip. We've already got a lot of people going, and what a great trip it is. Okay, so peace agreement. Donald Trump's peace plan, the question was to all of us, does this peace plan match the one prophesied in the Bible? And, of course, we know now that it has 4 of the characteristics of the 5 that, you know, we look for the 5 prophesied characteristics to the peace agreement. This one has 4 of them in it. It doesn't mention the temple, but it kind of leaves way when it talks about that every nation should be able to pray on the Temple Mount, things like that. It leaves open an avenue that we could go down to build a temple in the future. And again, this peace plan that they rolled out was kind of like a base for negotiations. It's not the end all. I mean, our ambassador to the United Nations, Kelly Craft, she actually said, hey, we're willing to negotiate this. Palestinians, if you want to come back to us, let's go back and forth on it. And so who knows where we'll end up before this is over with. The key is that they're starting to map out the area so they can go ahead and implement some of Israel's portion of the plan. That's what I'll get to in just a moment. But students of Bible prophecy, many of you out there on social networking, you go through JPC and studying this stuff. Obviously, we've all been anxiously awaiting the unveiling of Trump's peace plan. Everyone wanted to know if this plan would be the one that would launch the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon. And it very well could be. We don't know. Irvin Baxter nor I am willing to say, yes, 100% this is it. We're living through this just like you guys are. And we're following it on a daily basis. We talked about it at lunch today. I had lunch with Irvin up in the lunchroom up front, and we talked about, this is what we're talking about every time we get together just about. I'm going to dinner with him this evening, and I promise you it'll come up again. I think we're going to Chuck E. Cheese tonight to celebrate somebody's birthday party. And somehow or another, Irvin Baxter and I will get on prophecy. So that's just the life we live. But we are always, hey, Irvin, did you read anything that I haven't read on the peace agreement? That's where we're at right now, because we're all living through this, trying to determine if this is the one that starts the final 7 years. So the scriptures prophesy 5 things that will be contained in the prophesied Palestinian-Israeli peace plan, which will trigger the final 7 years. And we will, I've listed those many times. I'm not going to list all of them on the show today, but I am going to list one. And we're going to show where the prophecy is in Scripture and described. Irvin wrote a great article that's coming out in the March-April edition of Endtime magazine that goes through all of this in great detail. And so, but the one I'm going to cover today is the Palestinian state in Judea, because there's so much happening with that right now. I mean, there's no way I couldn't cover it today. But Bible says in Matthew chapter 24, verse 15 through 16, and then in verse 21, the Bible says, when you therefore shall see, this is the words of Jesus, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation occur, that was spoken of by Daniel, the prophet, back in Daniel 7, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. Jesus foretold an event called the abomination of desolation. Other passages clearly say this event will happen 3.5 years after the Palestinian-Israeli peace agreement is signed. He warns that Jews who are living in Judea will have to flee for their lives. Obviously, Judea is going to be under enemy control at that time. Well, if you look, this is a 2,000-year-old prophecy, and I'm going to go through some of it today. Now, again, in the March-April edition, Irvin laid out this huge article explaining this in great detail. One of the neat things is that, obviously, if you're a subscriber to the magazine, you'll get your copy and you'll get to read this. If you're on the new platform, you go to watch.endtime.com, Endtime's new platform, which is all access to everything that we have. You're automatically subscribed. It's $12.99 a month. You're automatically subscribed to Endtime magazine. So you'll be getting, this is all access. You'll be getting access to the current magazine and the magazine's, I think it's like 2 years of archived magazine. You can read all that. Well, you'll be getting this article where Irvin details this just right. I mean, we see how it goes along with the Trump's peace plan, and it's pretty detailed. I mean, it's like the Trump peace plan went through the prophecies of the Bible and said, hey, let's do this, let's do that. It almost seems like that. And real quick, let me give you an update on Irvin Baxter. You say, well, where's Irvin Baxter? I haven't seen him. Well, this is my 9th straight day on the radio. And a lot of people are emailing me, Dave, where's Irvin? What's going on? Is he sick? No, Irvin is in great health, doing really well. But he's working on, you remember we put out the Revelation commentary series a couple years ago. And he shot it a couple years ago. And we just put it out, I don't know, latter part of last year. Well, that's part 1. He's got to do part 2 from chapter, I think, 13 through chapter 22 of the book of Revelation. And I don't know if you've known this or not, but this is one of Irvin's projects that he wants to finish in his life. He's always wanted to do a very animated Revelation commentary. Well, that's what this is. He's got half of it done. Right now, he's kind of taken a sabbatical from everything, going into seclusion, and he is writing the book, and he's putting together the 10 lessons that go to finish this off. It's a humongous project, and for him to get it done with his travel schedule, plus doing his part on the radio and television shows, it would take forever. It takes a year or two doing that with our schedule. So what I've done is, Irvin Baxter asked me, Dave, will you take all the radio? I'm doing the television programs, and so he can focus on that project. And then when he gets done, we'll go back into our regular rotation and get back in there. So hopefully we're going to be able to get Irvin on the program maybe Monday or maybe first part of next week. We'll see, because he travels this weekend. Just to give you an update on where he's at on his project and everything. Every time I see him, I'm like, hey, you got that book done yet? And he just laughs at me because it's a huge project. So thank you for understanding and why Irvin hasn't been on the program. So, okay, now back to the peace plan. So, what's going on? We're following this. Remember, there's going to be a two-state solution created into Judea because Jesus warned in 2,000 years ahead of time, when you see the abomination of desolation occur, let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Don't go, if you're on the rooftop, don't go down into your house. You hit the ground running. If you're out in the field working, don't go back to your house to get your billfold or anything. You run, because when that abomination of desolation occurs, then it's going to be great tribulation like there's never been before, never going to be again. And so that's going to happen. We know because of that prophecy that during the end time, there's going to be a two-state solution created, or a situation where there's going to be an autonomous, a self-governing situation for the Palestinians, and the Jews will be allowed to live out there. Those will be the Jews, the settlers that are called today. You're going to have to flee. Well, the Jerusalem Post reported that Benjamin Netanyahu said to the Post that the Democratic president could not stop the Trump plan. Many people have been asking about this. What happens if, I don't think this is going to happen, but what happens if Donald Trump doesn't get elected and we get a Democrat like a Bernie Sanders or a Biden or somebody elected in November? What happens to this plan then? Well, Netanyahu said once the Trump plan is put forward, the goalposts have been moved, and it will be very difficult for any administration to move them back. In other words, that's why you want to talk about the mapping that they're doing over in Israel right now, and I'll get into that in great detail here in a minute. Netanyahu said that we will move forward with the plan once the mapping process is done. So in other words, until the mapping process is done, and what they're doing in Trump's peace plan, they gave out some maps that were kind of general, if you've seen them. But those are just maps so they could be released in the peace plan. Now they're going out and they're mapping that area in great detail to the point where every fence line, every field, they could say from aerial views and everything, they could say, no, that field belongs to the settlements, Jewish settlements, and this area is Palestinian. And so that's what they're doing right now. Well, Netanyahu has said, we'll move forward with this plan once the mapping process is done, and it won't take long. But here's where the political part comes in. He says, we're going to do this as long as I'm reelected. Now, that's why I went through some of the reelection process and what's happened over the last year first, because this has become political between Netanyahu and Gantz. And so when Netanyahu was asked if it was important to apply sovereignty over the territories before the American election, he said it's not going to be a factor. He said any administration, Democrat or Republican, will have to work by the new realities because they're going to try to get some stuff done and get the ball rolling down the hill before our election here in the United States. And Netanyahu said that I'm sure the next administration, whatever it will be, will have to consider the fact that there's a new plan and that we've already started it. Okay? I put that in there. We've already started it because that's what they're doing. So, what's happening now? Well, the Jewish mission, another thing that's happening, you realize that when Donald Trump was elected, he knew, he said, hey, I want to get a deal done in the Middle East. He realized to get that done that he would have to take the power or the veto of this away from the Palestinians and get it in the hands of, or get Arab support for this so they could kind of pressure the Palestinians. Well, there was a Jewish mission to Saudi Arabia. Now, these things are unprecedented, you understand. A Jewish mission to Saudi Arabia, and they said that it was the result of a 2-decade effort. So some of these things have been happening that you may never have heard of in the news unless you read a Israeli paper, and some of them never reported on these things. But a delegation of 30 Jewish American leaders was hosted by a senior government officials. This was last week in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, for a 4-day summit. And it was organized by the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations, which is a central coordinating body for the American Jewry. This was the first such specifically Jewish delegation to the Sunni Muslim kingdom in nearly 3 decades, okay? And a lot of this, Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, these guys went over there and opened up relationships to many Arab nations, and some of this is a result of that. They opened doors that Israel could, it was like a brick wall. But because Donald Trump and them have went over there and opened up some of these things, they've allowed these guys to go in and have communications, plus the situation with Iran and their nuclear aspirations and what they're wanting to do. These Gulf states are recognizing this and saying, hey, we need to normalize relations with Israel because we're going to need their protection along with the United States. Well, in a key statement, they said that this meeting that they went to, the first time in 3 decades that a Jewish delegation went to Saudi Arabia, they said that it sends a signal that the general Arab world is tired of the Palestinians refusing to move forward. Now, that is a very key statement because up until this point, the Palestinians have just basically been able to say, nah, we don't want to do anything with it, walk away from the peace table, they're done. Things have changed in this present situation. Donald Trump has went and made friends with all these Arab nations, and then he has said, that's on one hand. So he's kind of taken this veto where they can just fall away. He's kind of taken that away. And then on the other hand, he said, hey, we're going to put this peace plan forward. Israel's got a part. They're going to get some things. And the Palestinians are going to get some things. And Palestinians, if you want to play ball, yeah, you can be part of this. If you don't want to play ball, we're going to go ahead and implement Israel's part. So there's a lot, the dynamics are totally different than they've ever been when it comes to a peace initiative between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And we're watching this very closely every day. We're living through it just like you are. I'm getting up and reading these reports and poring over them, making sure that we know what's going on because we want to determine, is this the peace agreement we've been watching for?
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
About our trip, it was a wonderful experience. We totally enjoyed the time spent with other believers, worshiping and experiencing the places where Christ walked. One of our favorites was being on Mount Moriah, where the Holy of Holies are, the Dome of the Spirit. And the teachings that Brother Baxter did was so enlightening. It was so much to take in. It will take us another month or two to really grasp the full extent of the knowledge we received on this trip. Our tour guide in Israel was fantastic. He was very knowledgeable. I think God chose him just for us. Thanks, Jana. Our lives will never be the same. We will try to do this tour again. Mike and Julie L., Cayman Islands.
Join us May 1st through May 16th, 2020, for a trip to the wonderful land of Israel and the Holy Roman Empire reborn.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
You know, Stark, he actually said in this article that it was very moving, the fact that they were there at some of these Arab meetings, and it says a very important quote. And as many of them have stated, they would like to see this, the peace agreement, be part of the start of a negotiated deal. Now, you realize that prior to this, they went back to the Arab deal, the Arab initiative, peace initiative that they've always laid out. The Palestinians have always said, no, we've got to go by the Arab deal that's been laid out. But now you've got Arabs saying that they would like to see the Trump plan be the start of a negotiated deal. I mean, it's totally different atmosphere than it has been before. Now, Donald Trump's statement at the White House the day he released his peace plan on January 28th. Many of you seen it. And Donald Trump stated, and I'm quoting from his speech, he said, "This is the first time Israel has authorized the release of a conceptual map." You remember the two maps, if you've been through the peace deal, I've had them up here on our screen in the studio. They released a conceptual map. It's the first time Israel has ever done that in a peace initiative, illustrating the territorial compromises that it's willing to make for the cause of peace. In other words, they're saying, and Netanyahu and Gantz both agreed with this, that they are willing to trade land for peace and have a peace deal. Of course, back in 2009, Netanyahu said in his Bar Ilan speech, if they were willing to demilitarize, we could have a two-state solution. And Trump went on to say, and they've gone a long way. This is an unprecedented and highly significant development. Now, this is very important because for the rest of my program. Donald Trump said, we will form a joint committee with Israel to convert the conceptual map into a more detailed and calibrated rendering so that recognition can be immediately achieved. Did you hear that? We want to get these maps done so we can immediately achieve a sovereign areas and they can move to annexation and a lot of these different things. We want to recognize that. And we will, and he goes on to say, we will also work to create a contiguous territory within the future Palestinian state for when the conditions for statehood are met, including the firm rejection of terrorism. This is for the Palestinians. And then Trump went on to say, under this vision, Jerusalem will remain Israel's undivided, very important, undivided capital. But that's no big deal, Donald Trump said, because I've already done that for you. You recognize Jerusalem as their capital. He said, we've already done that, but that's okay. He said, it's going to remain that way. And then he said, and the United States will recognize Israeli sovereignty over the territory that my vision provides to be part of the state of Israel. So now you understand when you see articles in the Jerusalem Post, Times of Israel, Israel National News, all these different news sources, that the mapping process has begun. The Jerusalem Post, Netanyahu said, hey, guess what? Remember the mapping process that Donald Trump mentioned on January 28th when he revealed the peace plan? That these conceptual maps would be mapped out in great detail. Guess what? That process has begun. And sovereignty is to follow. So remember, Donald Trump said, hey, here we go. We're gonna put this out. Palestinians, if you want to get on board, great. We're going to give you 4 years to let us know. You're going to come in, demilitarize, recognize Israel as a nation, and a lot of different things. We're going to give you 4 years. They're going to change their government, a lot of different things. They need to know that these guys are on board with becoming a true state that can live side by side with Israel. But Donald Trump said, and then we're going to implement, Israel's going to go ahead and annex their part and they're going to get, because they're willing to play ball with this peace agreement, we're going to go ahead and allow them to do that. Palestinians, you don't want to play ball? Fine. You don't get anything. And these guys are going to get it. So what the Jerusalem Post article said, and I want to go through some of this, the joint mapping process of the Israeli team and the American team is underway as we speak. Donald Trump said that. He was in Ariel. He said, this is a major mission. The area has an 800-kilometer perimeter, and this is serious work, but we will work as quickly as possible to get it done. Now, obviously, remember I told you before, this is becoming political. So here Netanyahu is just a few days. I mean, the Israel elections are Monday. And so he's before other elections, he's said just about anything he could to get elected. Now, I don't dislike Netanyahu, but I'm just saying, at the end of the day, the guy is still a politician. And so he said there is no artificial impediment. He said for the mapping process, one must consider every valley, every section, every nook and every line. I mean, it's going to be very detailed. So there's no discrepancy of what the Palestinians get, what the Israelis get, and the settlers and this, that, and the other. He said this is very serious. We are determining here lines that have historic implications. He said they said that the mapping process would allow for the application of Israel law or sovereignty on these areas and later American recognition as well, which Donald Trump said he would do in his speech. He said once the work is complete, sovereignty can happen immediately. So these things are moving forward very, 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 very quickly. Now, some have speculated that Donald Trump won't recognize these areas if it's not backed by the international community. But the fact of the matter is, you understand Donald Trump really doesn't care what the international community thinks. I mean, the international community, you remember what Obama did, the Obama administration did at the end of 2016. They allowed Resolution 2334, the UN Security Resolution, UN Security Council resolution to pass. They should have vetoed it. So wrong. But they allowed it to pass that said Israel's right to East Jerusalem and the West Bank is illegal for them to occupy that under international law. Donald Trump said, I don't really care about that. He recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital in the face of the international community, okay? And then he also moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem against the will of the international community. And then the United States recognized the Golan Heights as part of Israel against the international community. So what would make you think that Donald Trump wouldn't recognize this area in his peace plan that Israel annexes and wants to go ahead and gain sovereignty over that because of all the other? He doesn't really care what the international community thinks. So this is what Irvin, Baxter, and I were talking about at lunch. If Donald Trump does that, how's that all going to play out with the peace plan? Because the Bible says the Antichrist will confirm a covenant with many for a 7-year period. And this is a question that, like I said, we're living through this. I don't know of anybody that knows the answer to this right now. We've talked about it. We discussed it at great length. We're studying the prophecies. And we see the thing, or we see a peace initiative being laid out on the ground. They're mapping the thing out right now. But how will this all come to play? I mean, because we know there's going to be a two-state solution from Matthew chapter 24. And you realize that the UN Security Council, even with the United States, all 15 members unanimously just decided yesterday to maintain their stance of support for a potential two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, along with the establishment of a Palestinian state alongside Israel through direct negotiations between both parties. So everybody on the UN Security Council just agreed to that yesterday. They reaffirmed their position. The United States agreed with that. We're in alignment with that. Donald Trump's peace plan allows for a two-state solution. If you follow what we've been saying, the prophesied agreement will have a two-state solution or an autonomous situation for the Palestinians in the West Bank. So these things, I mean, is it possible that the international community will get on board with this? At some point, yeah, they will. And will allow this thing to go ahead and happen. How it all plays out right now, we don't know. I know there's going to be a peace agreement signed. I mean, I can go through the prophecies and tell you that. But how it all comes into fruition, we don't know that at this point. What pieces, what all has to happen to finally get the thing done, we don't know that. I mean, we're living through it. And I'm following this stuff daily. Keep it up. I'm staying up late at night reading, just to make sure that we can keep you up to date on it. Because believe me, I want to know, and I'm sure you want to know, is this a peace agreement that starts the final 7 years? That's the main thing. But let's talk some more about this mapping project. You know, Israel elections are next Monday, March 2. And it seems that the candidates, Netanyahu of the Likud party, Gantz of the blue and white, are kind of at odds with this. Now, they both said that they would agree with Trump's plan. But the mapping project has turned political. The Israel National News reported that the Netanyahu goes into Judea and Samaria where Gantz fears to tread. That's the title of the article. So listen at this. Netanyahu promised sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. Gantz is waiting for international approval, meaning that it would not be in the foreseeable future. But you've got to look at what's the Bible say. The Antichrist will confirm a covenant with many. You say, well, hold on a minute right there. That's got to be either Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, or somebody, because we presented the plan. It's got to be one of them. They got to be the Antichrist. No, hold on. That's not the way it works. For the international community to get on board with this, for Europe and Russia and all these people to get on board, there's going to be hundreds of politicians involved in this. The Bible also says, in other words, one part of the Bible will not contradict another part. It's never going to happen. And so we know what the Bible says. The Bible says the Antichrist will come from the European Union, not from the Middle East. He's going to come from the European Union. So we know that in this peace agreement, at some point, the European Union is going to get on board. We know that for a fact. And the Antichrist will be an up-and-coming politician. He's going to be one of the people that are involved in getting that thing across the finish line. But he's not revealed. Obviously, we don't know who he is until the abomination of desolation. So, are we following this every day? You better believe we are. This article says the formation of a joint American-Israeli committee, which is exactly what Donald Trump said would happen on January 28th when he announced the peace plan. He said that this joint American, the article says the joint American-Israeli committee to map out the areas of Judea and Samaria within Israel's sovereignty will be recognized by America. Donald Trump said he would. And that has presented Israeli voters, remember it's become political, that's presented Israeli voters with a real choice between the policy between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Benny Gantz at this upcoming election on Monday. They're watching this whole scenario, how it's playing out. And I just read today where the Likud party of Netanyahu has pulled ahead of the blue and white just a little bit in the polls. Well, then Netanyahu promised to impose Israeli sovereignty on the Jordan Valley and the northern Dead Sea area and to all Israeli communities in the Judea and Samaria without exception. Now, he just said this. Well, knowing what's coming Monday, less than a week out, he's staring an election in the face, and it appears that this mapping situation, this peace plan, is going to play into who gets elected. It's become very political. So we'll have to see what happens come Monday.
Does the book of Revelation frighten you? Do its symbols confuse you? For centuries, the book of Revelation has been misunderstood and misinterpreted. In Revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ, Volume 1, Irvin Baxter unlocks the mystery of the book of Revelation with in-depth analysis and commentary like you've never heard before. This 10-part definitive DVD series and 268-page comprehensive commentary book covers the first 12 chapters of the book of Revelation, featuring on-location photography, classic artwork, and symbolic illustrations. You'll walk away with complete understanding and peace about the events happening during the final years on Earth. These comprehensive study tools, available for $299, will deepen your biblical understanding as you dig into the original intent of the book, answering the mysterious prophecies and symbols of the book of Revelation. Don't miss this special offer. Call now, 1-800-ENDTIME, or go to endtime.com to order. Call or go online now to get this comprehensive Bible study.
So, in looking at this and knowing how it's becoming political, Netanyahu's proposal to take such a unilateral action was tempered with the release of President Trump's deal of the century on January 28th. And it obviously containing the conceptual map indicating, or there was two maps, indicating those areas of Judea and Samaria where America would recognize Israel's claim to sovereignty. And that's why the mapping process is so important. Because now the United States has come out and said, hey, we're going to leave a spot here. You've seen the dark spot on the map for a Palestinian state if they want to, if they abide by all of the stipulations that we put on them. And so both Israel and America would have probably prepared they probably will have prepared their own maps already. I mean, Jared Kushner, the chief architect of the Trump plan, he's virtually confirmed it. He said that it will take only a couple of months for the committee to complete its work, marrying the two maps to achieve this truly historic outcome. It's that close. You understand, everybody. Ambassador Friedman heads the three-man American delegation that's now sitting down with the three-man Israeli delegation on the mapping committee. And Gantz has been really powerless to stop the formation of working on the mapping committee. Indeed, Gantz urged Trump to release his peace plan before the elections. And Gantz has not even requested that one of his nominees be part of the Israeli delegation on the mapping committee. So here's the thing. In ignoring the mapping committee, Gantz is signaling the continuation of his policy opposing Israel extending its sovereignty into Judea Samaria with America's approval. Gantz has made it clear his own policy is that after the elections, he will work to apply Israeli sovereignty on the Jordan Valley. And he said, we will do this in a nationally agreed process and in coordination with the international community. Now, that's why I said I don't know how this thing's going to play out before it's all over with. Because we know before everything is said and done, the international community's got to be involved. So could it happen that Gantz would be elected? Now, I'm speculating. That just don't go on record and say Dave Robbins, said this is going to happen. I'm speculating. Is it possible that Gantz could get elected, form a government, and working with the international community, get this thing across the finish line? The Antichrist is involved, some politician, and then we move on into the final 7 years. At this point, we do not know. But all I know is what the Bible says, and this is what we're watching very closely. The article goes on to say, believing the international community would ever agree to Israel extending its sovereignty into any part of the Judea and Samaria, with or without land swaps of existing Israeli sovereign territory, is totally unrealistic. But the international community has been fixated for decades on seeing another Arab state created in the entirety of the Judea, Samaria, or in the area of the same size, including land that is currently part of Israel. The fact of the matter is the international community will never get what they want. The international community would love for them to go back to 67 borders. That's never going to happen for Israel. Those are indefensible borders. And so Gantz, he's wanting to maybe land swap here and there, but with the approval of the international community. Donald Trump doesn't care about the international community. He's saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. And you say, well, and that's why I said some people have speculated, oh, Donald Trump's not going to do that. He fears the international community. No, with his recognition of Jerusalem, with his moving the embassy there and recognizing the Golan Heights, Donald Trump could care less about the international community and what anybody thinks. But it appears that Netanyahu's opponent, Gantz, does. So Monday's election should be very interesting, and then the weeks and months that follow that to see really what happens, because, like I say, you understand, if this is the peace agreement, and if this is the prophesied one, this is the most dramatic prophecy in the last 2,000 years. I mean, we will have started the final 7 years. It's the prophecy in the Bible with a date on it. The Bible says the Antichrist will confirm a covenant with many, or he, the Antichrist, will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, a week of years, 7 years. Once that occurs, we got 7 years left till this thing wraps up. The rapture, second coming, Battle of Armageddon. So It's a pretty important election. There's two important elections coming up, one May 2nd and obviously one in November of this year in the United States, to see how all this stuff plays out. Now, the Jerusalem Post also reported that another article, and it said that Netanyahu's mapping process has begun and sovereignty to follow. I may have two articles in here, the same thing. What I wanted to do, I've already went through that, but what I wanted to do is to go down and talk about some of the prophecies, because so much of the prophecy, I'm going to go down to Zechariah 14:2. So much of the prophecies about the end time Bible prophecy is focused on Israel. And Israel, Jerusalem specifically, will remain undivided. Now, this has been in the news lately as well. Zechariah 14:2 says, "For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, the houses rifled, the women shall be ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue thereof, the residue of the people shall not be cut off." And then, so that brings us to my Israel Hayam article. And the title was, "Israel's construction plans mean Palestinians can't divide Jerusalem." So Netanyahu is trying to cut them off at the pass here. His decision to greenlight the construction of about 1,000 housing units in East Jerusalem in the coming weeks is great news for the strategic vision of preserving Jerusalem as a united capital. This is what he's trying to do. Now, will he get it done? I don't know. You've got planning and zoning, and they deal with the same thing there they deal with here in the United States. I was in construction for 20 years. I know planning and zoning and getting things approved. It can take forever sometimes. And so it really depends. And plus, they're dealing with a lot more issues than we are here in the United States. But with Donald Trump, under his vision of Israel, Jerusalem will remain Israel's undivided capital, the undivided capital of Israel. He laid that out in his plan. And an overwhelming amount of end-time prophecy is devoted to Israel. And that's why we talk about it. I've actually had people ask, "You guys are on Israel again today." Well, yeah, we absolutely are. I mean, when you consider the peace agreement, that's between Israel and the Palestinians. When you consider Armageddon will be fought in Israel, the final battle on planet Earth, Armageddon, will be fought in Israel. I mean, Zechariah 14:2 again, "For I will gather all nations," this world governing armies, "against Jerusalem to battle. And the city shall be taken, the houses rifled, the women ravished, half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city." Ezekiel chapter 39:16, the Bible says, "And thou shalt come against my people of Israel as a cloud to cover the land. And it shall be in the latter days, and I will bring thee against my land, that the heathen may know me, when I shall be sanctified in thee, O Gog, before their eyes." And then, of course, Revelation 16:12-16. "And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to battle of that great day of God Almighty." Then God throws in a last-minute warning right there. "Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon." Armageddon comes from the word Har Megiddo, or Hill of Megiddo. It's going to start in the plain of Megiddo in the north, come down the Jordan Valley, right up into Jerusalem, right where it makes the turn right there at the north end of the Dead Sea. Goes right up in Jerusalem. I've been on that road many times. And you can see how it's all going to play out. Well, then, of course, and you say, well, why are you telling us this? Because we talk about Israel almost every day. I mean, because a big majority of end-time prophecy is dealing with Israel. Once this peace plan starts, it's going to kick so much off in the final 7 years. And we're watching precursors to a lot of this. I mean, think about it, the third temple. The third temple is the one thing that's not specifically mentioned in Trump's peace plan. But there is going to be a third temple. And it's going to be built right there on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4. Let no man deceive you by any means, for there shall not come, that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. It is impossible it will be impossible for the Antichrist in the future to sit in the temple of God if there's no temple. That's impossible. These prophecies couldn't be fulfilled if there's no temple. There will be a temple built in the near future. Revelation 11, 1 and 2. And there was given unto me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise, measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. So, there's going to be a temple. And then, of course, the abomination of desolation, Daniel 9:27. He shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of that week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. For the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured out upon the desolate. Then Jesus said, When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. So the abomination of desolation, that's when the Antichrist will stand in a rebuilt Jewish temple proclaiming to be God. So there you have it, a Middle East update. What's going on with the peace plan? Well, they're in the mapping. Donald Trump mentioned that the mapping situation that would happen so they could recognize Israel, this sovereign area. Well, that's exactly what's happening now. The mapping process has started, and you and I are living through this. Is it a fulfillment of Bible prophecy? It appears to be, and we'll have to see how some of this stuff plays out, but we're living through these things, you and I. Very, very exciting times, and I wanted to give you an update on it because it's not going away. These guys are very much involved, and this big snowball's rolling down a hill at this point. So, is this a peace plan? That's the question. We'll keep on top of it and let you know every day what's going on as we move forward in Bible prophecy.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.